So this is the garden at the end of September. Sorry about the noise, it's not actually traffic for once. We've had terrible storms and the river right in front of the cottage is extremely high. Croeso, the wind. Croeso, welcome to Cottage Diary. Yes, so as I say, it's the end of September and this is how the garden is looking, which is quite miraculous really, given how incredibly stormy it's been. I'm surprised that I have any flowers left. And as you can see, in September, the orange seems to disappear. If you remember the last tour that I did, there were bits of orange, which was a bit controversial, so not everyone liked it. So this is back to the palette that I have all year round. Mainly pinks and purples and whites with a little bit of yellow. And I do actually prefer it. I think it's still looking really rather nice for the end of September, and still so much food for wildlife, which makes me really happy. And even though these are the same colours that I've had all year round, they're much deeper, richer tones. So the yellow is obviously very vibrant. The purple, it is like velvet. It's like they're dual colours, even though they're still the pinks and purples. Yeah, I'm actually really happy with. I've been unhappy with the garden in September the last couple of years, but this is looking much more how I envisaged it. So the river is really high. If you see over there, that isn't actually meant to be river. That's where the river has burst its banks. That's all that. Oh no, I can't do it. The water that you see in the back is actually fields that have flooded. So yeah, we've had ridiculous quantities of rain the last few weeks. So how is your garden looking in September? Do you still have a lot of things in flower, or have you got mainly seed heads and things dying off, or have you even got snow already? We just mostly tend to get very wet and windy here. I will go through the plants that are in flower, even though I know most of you will already know the names of them, but for those that don't, I will briefly go through them. Flower here, it's called a Japanese anemone, and they come in various shades of pink and white, and generally you can have some flowering from sort of August through to the end of September usually. Of course, this has been flowering since my last video, which of course is a black-eyed Susan or a Rudbeckia, and this one is Goldstrum. I was thrilled that a couple of days ago the lupin decided to pop up another flower head, which just goes so well. Sorry, I'll try and do it slowly. Goes so well with my Helen Picton aster that I mentioned last year. It's only just starting to open. Isn't that beautiful? I've mentioned this geranium that you can see scrambling through the border several times because it's such a good plant, but it's Geranium Roseanne. I love this little bit of the garden under the arch of sloes. I find it a really magical space. Of course, it's where Josephine, this is Josephine March, our hare's area. And I love how the Physocarpus Diablo, this dark shrub, really makes these dual colours sing at this time of year. This lovely blue, it's our native chicory. I really love that flower. Really pleased that we still got some of the flowers left. And this lovely small short climber purple skyliner rose is flowering again, and again that sort of magenta colour next to, let me show you what it's next to the Helen Picton. Oh, really beautiful with this low autumn light. The colours are just beautiful. This is a lovely plant if you want some height and some late flower and something that's amazing for pollinators in the garden. This is Helianthus lemon queen. So it's a perennial sunflower. I don't know if you can see, but even in this very stormy weather, there are a few bees that have braved the day to come and feed on this. And the Rhapsody in Blue rose is also still flowering. Look at all those flower buds still to come. And again, they look lovely, I think, with the Helianthus lemon queen and the Helen Picton aster, I should say. Ooh, that river sounds angry, doesn't it? And the perennial wallflower Bowles mauve, still got a few flowers left on them. I love that colour. And high up there you can see my lovely blush noisette rose, still flowering. Absolutely gorgeous. And then you've got the sloes behind and the wild rose hips. And then above that, the pyracantha berries. Really pretty. This is a really nice Japanese anemone if you don't want pink. It's Honorine Jobert. Really nice white, very delicate. And yeah, late in the evening it really sings in the garden. It's absolutely beautiful. And the great thing about Japanese anemones are they don't mind some partial shade either. So they're a really good plant to have if you don't have full sun in your garden. This border, in fact this border and the one behind it are not looking great because yesterday we dug out most of the plants because we ended up with lots and lots of meadowsweet, which we love. We put that over in the orchard and in the wildwood, but meadowsweet doesn't flower for that long, and it doesn't flower till obviously about July, maybe late June. And so for a lot of the year this bed didn't have that much going in it, so we've dug it out. And yeah, when I buy plants for it, I'll show you what I'm putting in. Same with this side border. It was all hemp agrimony and meadowsweet. And again, we haven't got rid of any of the plants. We've just moved them into wilder parts of the garden because they just took over. And even though we've got actually quite a few other things flowering, growing in this part of the garden, they haven't really flowered because they've been bullied by the others. So hopefully next year this is going to look really nice. Pond's looking a bit scruffy because Daisy went in and took out most of the plants from it. It was far too congested. It's only a small pond. So yeah, everything sort of flopped a bit, but it's nice to be able to see the water now. I don't even know if people realise that that was a pond there, so let me show you it in relation to the garden. So yes, that's actually a pond there on the left, which is actually, it's always full of frogs and toads and newts, dragonflies and things, but you can never really usually see the water, so it is lovely to see. I really like this thalictrum because the stem and the foliage go bright yellow at this time of year. And this is splendid white. Very delicate little flowers. I do like it. Statuesque umbellifer is a selenum, and I particularly like it. I mean, I love umbellifer flowers anyway, this one here, but I love this one for the dark purple stems as well. But we're going to be moving it in the winter because it's too near the front of the border, so it blocks out the light for a lot of the other plants. So we'll be putting it further back, but it's an absolutely beautiful plant. This is one of my many sedums. I do love sedums at this time of year. This is Autumn Joy, and it certainly is. And the bees absolutely love it because look how many tiny little flowers there are on each stalk. Absolutely hundreds. So really good feed for the pollinators. The butterflies love it as well. The sedum is very, very popular with the butterflies. Oh, look at them, bless them. The birds have started singing again. Have a little break, don't they, in late summer, and they're back now, it's autumn. This lovely pale pink phlox is Phlox paniculata Monica Linden Bell. It's been flowering since June, I think. It has its first flush of flowers and they've gone over. I then chop it back a bit, and then usually Phlox paniculata are quite good at giving you a second flush in autumn. Autumn is very, very far along this year, but only being the end of September now, and the witch hazel is already starting to turn. That will eventually turn bright, bright yellow, but it's already turning. And this is monk's hood, aconitum. I can't remember what it's called. I'll put the note at a complete blank. Yeah, monk's hood and aconitum. I think it's a wrensie. But I grow this instead of delphiniums because delphiniums just won't grow in my garden. Oh. They're very pretty, aren't they?
Here are our jars of tinctures and potions so far. So I'm just going to go through what we've got. From our last video, our 2 oils have infused nicely. So this is the bog myrtle and plantain oil for insect bites, which we're going to be turning into a balm. And the other balm that we're going to be making is calendula and plantain, which we also made in the last video. So the next thing that we're going to be processing today is our mugwort and rosemary oil. So we're going to just leave this as an oil, and it's great for rubbing on aching muscles. It can be used for osteoarthritis, joint and muscle pain, sciatica, that sort of thing. So a really useful thing to have in the cupboard. The next thing that we made is a hair oil. So this has mare's tail and rosemary in it. So mare's tail is excellent. It's got lots of selenium and silicates in it, which really promotes healthy hair. You can also take it orally and it's really excellent for nail health. But this is going to be a hair oil that I've been using for quite some time now, just to keep healthy hair and grow my hair. So it has mare's tail and also rosemary in it. So rosemary is really good for stimulating hair growth. We've also made some homemade insect repellent. So this is just sage, rosemary, tansy and mint, which we put into a vinegar. Now what we'll do today is just strain this, and we can put it into a spray bottle and just apply as you would any normal insect repellent. Really useful. And last but by no means least are our 2 tinctures. Now both of these have similar properties, but just to make you aware that members of the Asteraceae, so yarrow and calendula, which are used in both of these, when taken internally, lots of people that suffer with hay fever can have allergic reactions to them, so just bear that in mind. So the last 2 that we've made are 2 tinctures. So tinctures are any herbs that are preserved in alcohol. We've just used cheap vodka, and the first one is lemon balm and yarrow, which I personally take to help regulate both period cramping and the heaviness of my bleeding. But it can also be used to soothe internally generally, so it can be used to aid with digestion and IBS and that sort of thing. So a very calming combination. And likewise with our second tincture, which is lemon balm and calendula. So I'm just going to go ahead and process these and take you along with me just so you can see what I get up to. The first thing that I'm going to be making today is the balm, starting off with the calendula and plantain. The first thing that we want to do is strain out all of the plant material. For that I'm going to be using a funnel and a sterile muslin cloth to get out any fine bits. I'm just going to put it straight into a glass measuring jug so we can know what kind of quantities of oil that we've managed to make. This is our beautiful calendula and plantain oil. And slowly and hopefully carefully, I'm just going to strain that into our measuring jug. So here we are, we've ended up with 300 ml of the beautiful plantain and calendula oil. The next thing that we'll want to do is put this over a bain-marie and add in candelilla wax. So this is a plant-based wax that we use that will turn this from a liquid into a nice solid balm. So yeah, because we're vegan, we tend to use candelilla wax, but other people tend to use beeswax to make balms. But yeah, isn't this absolutely stunning? Now I've just got everything set up on the stove top. What we have is our bain-marie on a medium heat, our beautiful calendula and plantain oil, and our candelilla wax. Now what I've done here to calculate how much wax you need to oil is for every 100 millilitres of oil you add 20 grams of wax. So since we have 300 ml of oil here, I have 60 grams of candelilla wax measured out. Really simple. And what I'm going to do is I'm slowly going to melt the wax by bringing the wax and the oil to a heat to temperature just very gently. So you don't want it to be bubbling and that sort of thing, but you just gently warm it until all of the wax is dissolved. To our oil, I'm just going to add the 60 grams of candelilla wax, and I'll just leave it here until all the wax has melted. It will just turn to a clear liquid. So now that the candelilla wax has melted into our oil, I'm going to add some rose essential oil. This step is completely optional, we just love the scent. So I'm going to add about 20 to 30 drops into our mixture. So here is our finished balm, and I'm just going to pour it into our nice jars. I'm now going to strain one of the tinctures. So this is the yarrow and lemon balm tincture, but the process is the same no matter what you strain. So I'm just going to open it up and pour it through the funnel and muslin cloth. It smells really nice. So now we're left with 400 millilitres of the tincture, and this was a clear liquid before, so this was vodka, so you can see that it's definitely taken on all the nice nutrients that we want it to. It's absolutely beautiful ambery colour now. I'm just going to bottle it up into some dark glass bottles. So these have been sterilised. So first I washed them in really hot soapy water, and then I put them in a low heat into our oven just until they were nice and dry and sterile. So that's made 1.5 bottles of tincture. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the calendula and lemon balm. So this has made a darker tincture again, probably because of the calendula flowers, and we've got 500 ml of this, so I'm probably going to use 2 of the larger bottles to bottle it up. Isn't it beautiful? On the same theme as getting our apothecary ready for winter, I also wanted to show a couple of other recipes that I'm going to be making. On the same theme as getting our apothecary ready for winter, I wanted to also show what I'm going to be making over the next couple of weeks to preserve some of our fresh produce. Today I'm going to be making a dill pickle and a homemade chutney. So both of these we really enjoy, and especially the dill pickle as it uses up lots of our cucumbers. I have a little bit of a hodgepodge of different types of cucumbers, both from our garden and ones that friends have grown, but they all work just as well. So making the brine itself is incredibly simple. There are just a few ingredients that you'll need. So what I do is I have an equal parts ratio of water to vinegar. So I'm going to be using 2 cups or 500 ml of water and 2 cups of apple cider vinegar. So yeah, I'm just going to be making up the brine now. So we've got 2 cups of the apple cider vinegar, which just happens to be this whole bottle. 1/4 cup of sugar. A couple of teaspoons of salt. A pinch of black pepper. Of course, plenty of dill. I'm going to be using dried dill today, but we usually grow our own and I would use fresh. I'm going to be adding 1 tablespoon to the brine. Then I also like to add about 4 cloves of garlic. Here's some of our homegrown garlic that we have left over. So I'm just going to peel this and cut it into quarters. You don't need to slice it thinly or anything like that. We just want it to infuse nicely with our brine. So then I'm just going to add the 4 roughly chopped cloves of garlic to the brine. So the last thing that we need to add is just 2 cups of water. And then I'm going to have it on the hob just on a medium heat so that the sugar can dissolve. So yeah, just as I said before, I'm going to let this just sit on the hob on a medium heat for about 10 minutes until the sugar is dissolved. And while that's doing its thing, I will show you how I prepare the cucumbers. So I've now got my nicely washed cucumbers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut them into batons. I prefer them to rounds for the reason that you can pack more into the jar that way. So I'm just going to have a little look and roughly measure how I'm going to cut them. Yeah, if you prefer just to have the traditional kind of like rounds rather than the batons, yeah, go for that. I just find you can get more into a jar that way. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And so now I've got a couple of the cucumbers sliced, I'm going to pack them into a sterilised jar. So here you can see I've packed the first jar. I try and do this quite tightly because it maximises the amount of cucumbers you can get into your pickle. Yeah, so it's worth taking your time over this step. Now, in terms of how much this recipe actually makes, this kind of depends on the size of your jars and how tightly that you're packing the cucumbers. But I tend to find that a large jar like this uses about 1.5 to 2 cups of the brine and will use up roughly 1 to 2 really large cucumbers or 4 smaller cucumbers. So there we are, the pickles look and smell absolutely amazing. You're going to want to leave these at least a couple of days in order to really absorb the flavour, but I find that they're better left for 2 weeks. In terms of storage, you can put them in the fridge, and this does make them last longer, so you can keep them in the fridge for about 9 to 12 months, but because we've sterilised the jars and we've made a hot brine, they can be kept in the cupboard for about 6 months. But yeah, they're absolutely great, and we have them with everything. There's no worry of them going out of date. We'll have eaten them well before the 6 months mark, I reckon. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, and I will put the recipe in the description so you guys can try it out. that isn't even all the tomatoes that we have that are ripe at the moment. It's been such a good year for tomatoes, but for now I think that's more than enough for our chutney. So next we have our tomato chutney recipe. We have a combination of two different sorts of tomatoes. So we've got the tomatoes that we grew ourselves in the greenhouse, which I think are the Gardener's Delight variety, but I'm not sure, I will check. And we've also been given some green tomatoes from a friend who was getting rid of their tomato plants, so that's very kind of them. Yeah, so we tend to make chutney quite regularly. It's one of our favourites. It's a really good way of using up extra produce, especially because it stores so well. So we will be able to keep this for a year plus, but it usually goes way before that again. And once we've made it, when you make any chutney, you have to leave it for a couple of months for the flavours just to meld together. So I'm making this actually on the 1st of September today, but we won't be opening it for another 3 months. So making it now will mean it should be ready for Christmas, which should be great. So I'm just going to take you over to the table and show you what the ingredients are. So here are all the ingredients laid out. So we have 250 grams of sliced shallots. These are homegrown, which is very satisfying. We've got 6 cloves of garlic that I cut quite finely. 1.5 kilos of tomatoes, 1 kilo of our homegrown tomatoes, and 1/2 kilo of green tomatoes, but the ratio of green to ripe tomatoes doesn't really matter. We're going to be using 500 millilitres of apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of salt, a teaspoon of ginger, and 250 grams of sugar. Now, if I was making it just for me, I would also add in some chilli, but my mum isn't a fan of spice at all, so for her sake, I'm going to leave it out. So as always, you can find the full recipe in the description, but for now, I'm just going to step by step show you how I make the chutney. So it's really very simple. You just add in all of the ingredients into a pan and leave it on a low heat until all of the sugar has dissolved. So I'm going to go in with our 1.5 kilos of tomatoes. The 250 grams of sliced shallots. The 6 cloves of chopped garlic, 250 grams of sugar, 1 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1 tablespoon of salt, and finally 500 millilitres of apple cider vinegar. Now I'm just going to let this simmer on a low heat for about 15 minutes until the sugar has dissolved. So this is me back after 15 minutes and everything started to soften and the sugar has dissolved nicely. What we need to do now is bring it up to a low boil or a simmer, and then you just leave it to cook for about 1.5 hours. Here is the finished chutney after 1.5 hours, and it's reduced down nicely. So the recipe has made 2 litres, which is equivalent to 2 kilos of chutney. And all I need to do now is put it into some jars, which I have sterilised in the oven. And there we have it, our tomato and shallot chutney. As I mentioned earlier, this will need to sit and mature for 3 months now, but we will be enjoying this come December. So that is incredibly exciting and a great way to start September. As you might be able to tell, it is now a couple of days later, and I just quickly wanted to pop on here to add a note about the balms that I made earlier in the video. The initial quantities that I think I said were 20 grams of candelilla per 100 ml of oil. Once this had fully set, it turned out to not have a consistency to our liking. It was way too solid, especially for the calendula and plantain balm that we wanted to use as a daily moisturiser. What we ended up having to do was melt that down and add a bit more olive oil, which really improved the texture. The final measurements were 15 grams of candelilla per 100 ml of oil. I'll of course put this in the description box below, and through the power of editing I will go back and add a quick note to the portion of the video where I actually do this, just so no one wastes any of the candelilla wax, as I know it's quite expensive. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, if you like this content, consider liking and subscribing. And as ever, it's lovely to hear from you in the comments. We really love engaging with people who watch and enjoy our videos. Especially with this style of content, it's lovely to share recipes and ideas, either about preserving or about herbalism and herbal remedies. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye for now.